Welcome everybody. We're going to do some MySQL kind of 60-second lesson to walk through. I don't know what level anybody's at, so let's create a database and name it something unique in MySQL Workbench. We'll apply this. Okay, so now we have a database named demonstration. Let's create a table. Right click, name the table something, and we're going to need a key, something unique that we can identify with, and we can go ahead and this will just be some characters like a string, 255 characters max. This is something else. Ultimately I want to make this, let's say for instance 6,2 is going to be like currency, so there need two numbers are going to be passed, and then 6 would be in front of the decimal. So that's just an option you can use. There's a lot of options, but usually you're going to be doing varchar, which is like just a string of characters. All right, now let's get to our tables. Now, these are the tables we're going to be needing for this project in particular. This is a social media project this time, so let's take a look at what we've got. Here are the tables. We've got favorites, feeds, following, messages, and user. Now, user is already going to be built because we already have that. Here you can see where my key is the favorite ID. Email and GUID obviously have their own. They're all strings, 255 max characters. And the next structure is going to be a table called following, where, let me see here. Right, it's just going to be in email. And that's probably more like for messages here. Let me see, let me get that open. Messages is going to be a lot bigger. We're going to have messages. UID is the key, unique element, unique index, initiator, timestamp, avatar, and recipient. So this is what we're going to need for the messages. And user, obviously, we're already familiar with this, but we will be changing it up. Instead of level, we're doing theme. We'll also be adding avatar, remove list, and a network and a banner. Remove list is like keywords that we don't have in our stories, so it'll search those out and remove those stories that have the remove list. Okay. Download and install from GitHub. This is pretty standard. We're going to go to where we left off, the JWT login. I'm going to download it, and now I'm going to extract it from my folder. We got to rename it to match, obviously, what we're going to be building, and we'll start from here. Now, obviously, one of the biggest things is going to be the database. It's right now, it's defaulted to, some fake characters because it's not tied to a database yet. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put us where we left off last time, and that is where we dialed into having a user already built. And so, as you can see here, everything's kind of defaulted out to just X'd out. So let's go ahead and make sure that this thing runs still like the user from our last demonstration, and then we'll change the database shortly. As you can see, these are, I'm going to log in as tutorial is the name of my login username. Let's go ahead and get our old database name in here to verify that everything's working, because we're going to have to be doing changes. It won't be identical to this, so I just want to make sure we're right on the right spot as where we left off on our last tutorial. So okay, this is the database is now dialed into that, and it really is just as easy as naming the database something else if you just want to jump into another one, as long as they are matching. So let's go ahead and test this out and make sure that this is going to work. Okay, so let's go ahead and install the server side and make sure that we are having an operating web app with a login. Yeah, okay, this is where we left off. Good. As you can see, that's where our components go. Now let's go ahead and get in the files we're going to need in the client side. I'm not going to write anything currently in there. I just need these placeholders so you can see the structure of what we have and what we're going to need. And luckily, since we've already done the JWT login, we have a significant amount of what we need already. So we just need to add banner, filters. These are all in the components. As you can see, as I'm writing the components directory. We need a network.js, save theme.js, and of course the size adjust. I'm naming my modules with capital letters, and my functions will start off with a smaller case. But you can have, if you have a different way of doing that, it's fine. Okay. So we've got all the timestamp it and spell it correctly. All right, so we have all the files we're going to need, just placeholding where they are. And after we do that, we make sure that let's go ahead and update our server.js. The thing about this is we don't have a level anymore. We have a theme. So I said if I was going to try to sign in now, I'd have to change a whole bunch of stuff on the front and back, client side and server side. So that's why I didn't want to dial into our other database just yet. So let's change everything that says a level to theme, because that's what they'll be expecting when we build and get this thing running. Coincidentally, at this point, if I was to start it up, we would have major problems because I'm now changing this stuff. So ultimately, we'll be starting it back up later on in the process of this video, or the next lesson probably. So those are the ones that are specifically for our user details that I just figured out. Now, these are routes. They're going to be something where they're going to dial in a certain kind of path, and these will be routed to our components, our different tables. And they all kind of run the same. It's basically saying, if you see this in the path, we need you to follow this path. And then it just goes to the file that's been exported for that module. And ideally, you want to keep these in the same row or in the same order as possible. So I think I'll probably adjust these a little bit. But let's go ahead and copy paste. Like I said, they're identical for the most part, other than these little nuances. And then let's go ahead and let's write these in as well. So we're going to get a new terminal, and let's build these routes. We're going to make a directory called routes, and within inside the routes directory, I'm going to make another directory named APIs. Just API. Now within API, let's go ahead and make these files that we're referring to within our routes. Feed.js. Let's go ahead and watch them up there on the left as well. Messages.js. And touch just means you're going to create a file. So messages.js has now been created as well. And we don't need messages without I had one that was just messages without the extension. So let's also write in favorites. Great. So let's go ahead and get the details for our user within the server file. Now, like I said, we had one that was level, and we changed it to theme. Now, some of our other very specific things about this project is the user's going to have a specific banner. So very similar to the theme, we're going to basically need to create a CRUD system for this banner. It's going to be something that initially starts up as a default, so it's going to be existing anyway. So we never do a post. We actually are just going to be like either updating or viewing. So it's really easy. We're not doing the full CRUD system, which we all know is create, react, update, delete. An email is going to be the parameter that was sent to us. As you can see, it's just a :email within the path. And so from here, we're going to say whatever email this is, we'd like to select it and get it. Whoever has the banner attached to this email address. Now, as you can see, these are consistent all the time. You're going to basically fire off what the query is, and then you're going to do a callback, whether it's going to be the callback has an error or it's going to have some good results, which we'll send right back to them. Hopefully we won't get the error, but we'll ask first and see. And you'll see me copy and paste this all the time because why write it constantly over and over if it's literally the same thing? So as you can see, I'm going to do a put here, and I just do the very keyword of put kind of tells you what we're doing in general. Now this one, I'm going to check token because I don't want people who aren't logged in to be able to change anything. I don't care if they download the banner. That's why I'm not really checking a token there. You can see the banner if you want to, but you can't change anything. And at this point, we're just going to update the table user and set banner to, basically what we sent them. So where the email equals whoever the user is, because we're basically going to change the banner. And a lot of this will be taken care of on the server side. We'll be sending an object, and that object would be called, rec body, and then on this side, on the server side. Okay, once again, we'll do another copy paste because why bother writing it over and over? It hurts my fingers. And as you can see, it's the exact same thing with a little nuances. We're just going to need the result here. It's not going to be pushed into like JSON and sent out the way we wanted the last one to. Okay, let's just clean it up a little bit. And what do we got next? So now we're going to kind of do the same thing, but it's going to be with the avatar. Another unique piece of each individual user. So I can just start changing the name because it literally is the same functionality. I need to update the avatar within the user table where the email equals whoever the user is. And once again, as you can see, we're going to do a fire off DB query, which is just a function that has a callback, and that's that. Here's the same thing. I'm gonna, as we did with the banner, I'm gonna switch it out to avatar, so we can either update or we can get it. We're gonna have a default one, so we never have to post anything, and there is no reason for the user to delete their banner or their avatar, so we don't ever build that because they're going to need one. They either have the default or they can change it, but they can always view it. And just kind of make sure, a lot of times I'll make mistakes like make things plural and they don't need to. So if it says result and you're expecting results or vice versa, major errors can throw. So it's something really simple that has to be exact. Yeah, it's too bad I spelled that wrong. I'll come back and get it in a second. So here we're going to do a parameter request based on this email. What we want to do is we're going to have to get this list. And for the most part, it's I'm doing a lot of things that are arrays. I turn them into strings. And a lot of times, in some projects, I can recall, I'll have to remind myself in this project, sometimes I'll even save objects as a string. And now, granted, that's just because I'm not using my like MongoDB, so and I'm using SQL, and it's not really going to help out if I throw an object in there. So if I can save things as an array, they were an array, I converted them to a string, or an object that I converted to a string, I can save them here. And you just swap out the entire character set that has whatever the array or object was, and then when it gets to the client side, you convert it to something JavaScript will enjoy. So JavaScript friendly. Anyway, so the result literally will be coming back as a whole list, and these are all the words that I said I didn't want to hear about within the. Let's say I had a whole bunch of blogs I'm looking at, a bunch of feeds, and I said I didn't want to hear about a specific word. All those words I selected that are specific to my curation of my feeds, that needs to be saved in a list, and so that's what this is. It's called the remove list. Now also, that remove list starts out kind of at a default with nothing in it, but still, it still is something. So there is basically, you can't get it down to nothing. You can just have it as an empty array. So in this portion, I'll be doing an edit to that array that it's being saved as a string. So on the client side, I'll take an array, save it to a string, and fire it off to this, to the edit list. As you can see, update the table user, and I'm going to set the whole remove list to whatever it's going to replace. Remove list, whatever I sent will be the replacement. Or the email, whoever's signed in, that's the specific list that will be updated. And let's do our favorite move, copy and paste. We've got our callback represented here. Nice. This is going to be something similar. I'm going to have an array of people that I'm in my network, and on the client side it's going to be something more JavaScript friendly, but since once again I'm working with SQL, it's going to be saved as a whole string, and I can convert it back and forth when I get it to the client side. So once again, my network needs to be obtained here, and it will be a string, rather large string, depending on how many people you have in your network. Could be 50, who knows. But we can make for some space in that when we have the character limit on the MySQL Workbench, and you can make those larger if you want to. So fairly simple concept of giving a list of my network emails, and then from there okay. So as always, we're going to be taking people off and adding people to our network, and so that's not all that's going to happen on the client side. Like I said, it's an array over there. It's an array or an object, I can't remember, but it's basically going to be set up to where I'm going to be doing all my different changes there, and then I completely replace the character string here. So there's really not a lot going on other than deleting and replacing it with whatever I've sent here. All the manipulation is being done on the client side so that I can save it as a string here. Now, I don't know how many people are using things like MongoDB, like NoSQL, but that's where I started because I was doing JavaScript. So a lot of times I kind of think that way first and then have to come in later and say, well, all right, well, how can we work this out with SQL? And so a lot of it is turning things into strings. And then, as you can see, this is a really common process. There we go. And we're just going to get the result.network. Okay, so here are our routes. These are the ones that don't really have, they're not on the server side page because I don't think they actually have anything to do with the actual individual's user information. These are all going to be different tables. Let's get them in order. Like I said, we're going to do favorites first, so let's just have that up there first. And we're going to have to write all the requirements, everything we're calling in, like we'll be using Express. So we're going to need to require that. This is going to be for all the routes. You're going to watch a lot of copying and pasting once you get the first one done. So to utilize Express, I'm going to go through and declare a router. And the database, obviously, is going to be something that we're familiar with because it's over there in the config. And Like I said, we'll be changing it later, so not to worry. It'll all be fine. We're going to need the check token function. All right. So here's all the capabilities for us to get the favorite list. So everything we've been going around favoriting, if we end up coming across that again, it'll say, hey, so-and-so favorited this. So it just needs to come in as a list. So what we're going to do is, it's been saved as a string, and so we'll be asking as a string, and then we get it to the client side. Once again, it'll be converted. So we're going to select this from the favorites table. And once again, this is very common. We had this on the other pages. We're going to go ahead and fire this callback. We've got our information, our request, and then we're going to be asking for an error result. So here we're actually going to be doing a post. So it's a little bit more work, not a big deal, but I'm sending out an object to the server, to this router. And when you do a post, there's a, you have to define like this bundle of information that you sent over. So as you can see, I'm going to break it apart, so when I do my SQL request, it's a little more understandable, and it's less work and less text. So I need to make a variable, and this variable is going to be an object. It's called favorite. Now all the things that I'm sending over within this add favorites to this API address is starting off with an email, and this is how it's going to be defined in the object. And within the body there's also going to be a GUID and a favorite ID. And now you'll find out that where this actually works together in the SQL request. So I'm actually posting something, so there's one more step in my callback. So I'll basically put my SQL statement here, insert this entire bunch of information into my table named SQL, or I'm sorry, it's named favorites. And here we go, the difference. See, it says DB query, and then it's got SQL comma. This is the object I need to get in there. It's not going to know what I'm talking about, and so after the SQL and it's kind of a comma, I'm going to put my variable name favorite. So it's going to expecting this during my post. So there's my data, all kind of diced up the way that it's going to expect it. Now obviously a delete is something we're very familiar with. We've already done a lot of this. So I write my path. I'm going to make sure we tell it what to delete, and the key of this is the favorite ID. That's the unique key. So ultimately that's how we'll decide which one to delete. We just have to tell it something unique. Now we'll just write the SQL statement. You don't have to do this, but I prefer to leave the actual words for the SQL. The SQL words would be capitalized. That's just easier for me to read. So within the favorites table, where our favorite ID is matching what I sent in the parameters, that needs to be deleted. That's kind of what I'm telling the SQL. So let's get our callback over here. Remember, this one's no different than the others. We're not adding an object or anything to it or passing that along. It's just going to expect this, and we'll expect a callback of an error or a result. Now, obviously, we got to export this whole thing. I sometimes forget this because it's at the end. So module.exports equals router. So remember to do that. Now, let's copy all this. Let's go to our blank page named feeds and paste it in. The reason I'm doing this is because it's the same thing over and over again. It's just the steps of an API. And you're going to be getting, you're going to be reading, deleting, updating, adding. It's all the same stuff. So let's just get down to specifics. Where it said favorites, let's just change it to feeds. So when I post something, this is going to be a little different because obviously that doesn't have the same table. This is what I'll be sending it as far as feed is concerned. You can change up my object so that it fits the structure of this table that I'm sending over in my feed table. So within the insert into the feed set and then set this entire object independently. Let's go ahead and swap out the feed there as well. Everything's the same for the post. Now, this one, remove feed. The feed's going to have an ID. So ultimately, whatever this ID matches, we're going to go through them and say, hey, go through the feeds where this matches, and we're going to get rid of it for this user. That's it. Now we're going to copy and paste for the message API as well. Like I said, it's all the same stuff. So copy, open the page up for messages, paste. Let's start clearing out all the words feed and put in messages. So that's repeating. This is always going to be very close to the same thing. This is just what API endpoints do. I'm not asking them to do a lot of functionality other than these simple requests. I mean, you can write a whole bunch more software or JavaScript over here if you wanted to do stuff. I'm just asking for very simple steps. Now, messages is an interesting one. So messages, I need to affiliate two different users to one message. We've got a recipient and an initiator. The initiator being the person who actually started the message, and the recipient, the person who received the message. Now, these two individuals, when they log in, it's going to hunt them down and find out every message that is affiliated with their email. So that's pretty much it. So two people are going to match every time because somebody sent it and somebody received it. Now, when let's say I viewed this item and deleted it, it'll still exist in the database until the initiator or the recipient, the other individual involved in the communication, when they viewed it and deleted it, it's gone from the database. It'll be automatically deleted. So this is how right now we're going to be viewing them, is select all of the messages where they are affiliated with these two users. So if somebody sent me something, it's going to show up. If I started it, it's going to show up. I guess that's probably a clearer way to say it. So I got to see my messages coming and going. And obviously order by timestamp. I just want to get things the way they showed up, which I think is default anyway, but you know how it goes. So let's go ahead and change our object around for messages. Within the messages, we're going to have completely different pieces of information. This is our object for it. It's going to have avatar that we'll be sending it. We'll be sending it, obviously, me, if I wanted to fire off a message. So I'll be the initiator. And the avatar is obviously so I can tell iconically who I'm dealing with just by seeing their icon avatar. And the message obviously would be important here. And then who exactly did I send this message to is going to be of importance as well. Timestamp, obviously. And UUID, if y'all don't remember from my other work, this is something I have to identify something with. If it's too hard to get something that's unique, I'll make something unique to name this. So we'll be sending this message out. It's a post. As you can see, I've swapped out my query to have the message represented. Okay, so let's do this put here for the messages. Now, the reason I'm doing this as an update, you'll see, is once the both have been viewed, then we'll be deleting them, as opposed to a traditional delete. One user does not have the ability to delete anything, and both of them have to agree that the recipient and the initiator need to both agree that they viewed this, and that will delete it. And once it's deleted, it's gone. There's no way you can get it back. So I'm not logging or keeping a record of anything, which some people think that's great. I don't know. I guess it's going to save up on space in your database for probably one nice thing about it. You're just going to have your active messages that you see on your app visible, and then that will be the end of it. And then the UUID will be the identifier of the message. So and let's just go ahead and get our callback in here. And we'll go ahead and name these correctly. All right, we'll see you next time.